going on, everybody? It's FREEDO here for your Overwatch, and Scott Mercer posted on the forums today a bombshell of a post trying to dispel a fairly strong rumor and rumbling in the community that supports are still getting less SR gains for wins than the other hero classes. I'll leave the post linked in the description below, but the evidence that he gives is that 1. The assumption that the on fire system, when it was recently adjusted, is to blame isn't the issue at all, because on fire is, and I'm paraphrasing here, is more or less an aesthetic feature. It is theoretically a byproduct of you playing well, but it's not directly related in any way to how the system judges how you play. Instead, we do get a bit of an opening into the mind of the matrix system that is the hidden MMR system, and that is the calculation of your SR adjustment after a match doesn't look at your teammates, as opposed to on fire, which does, by the way. He goes on, but instead compares you to the performance of other similarly skilled players with that hero across an enormous pool of competitive matches. So, we compare your Genji play to the play of other Genjis, Anas versus Anas, etc. Since we're comparing apples to apples, we shouldn't see any kind of support-specific bias in SR adjustment due to player performance. He continues by saying, we're still seeing anecdotal reports of some players experiencing lower SR gains on wins, but we're also seeing other reports from other support players that their SR gains look correct. Question time from FREEDO. How does anybody know what gains they're supposed to be getting? As if anyone really understands this system but Blizzard themselves. So either way, these anecdotal claims shouldn't really matter at all, because as he just said before, each hero is judged individually against the entire pool of Overwatch players, not necessarily the individual context of the game you just played. Which is odd, and I'll comment on that further. He goes on, based upon our investigation so far, it doesn't look like there's a broad systemic issue affecting all supports across all competitive matches. There might be a more localized issue affecting a specific hero or a certain type of playstyle or game situation. It also might be something completely unexpected, so we're doing a thorough examination of all the code that affects SR adjustment. This just brings more and more questions, unfortunately. The problem with this SR adjustment hidden MMR system is that once I peer into the rabbit hole, I want to dive deeper and deeper into Wonderland to understand all the ins and outs of it. The same issues and questions that we've had about this system still remain and don't really get quelled by this explanation. It is nice to know the method to the madness somewhat, that it's tracking your performance to other players in other matches by the way that you're not in and you're not playing against, but anyway. And I gotta admit, I'm a little bit afraid of this massive SR Dr. Frankenstein monster that Blizzard's created. Here's my questions. How do they track the stat for players properly grouping up? Sounds simple, but it's not, because players that don't properly group up will actively get more statistical output, more damage done, maybe more limbs, but at the same time are making massive mistakes that lose games. Does that player, based upon the law of averages on randomly winning some games, randomly losing some games, going to gain more SR than the player that statistically does less, but does the right play that wins games? Or another problem, ult management. How can this statistical system understand the biggest strategical component of Overwatch that, in my opinion, no amount of stats can prove your understanding of it? Ult management is an incredibly difficult thing that we have discussed on this channel at length and will continue to discuss because it is so complex. But for instance, a player that uses their ults at times that might get massive kill reward but horrible value, like at the end of a fight that you already lost, does that player statistically show up better than the player that was more restrained with their ult, only using it at the time that it would win the game, using it properly but with less statistical output? Here's another tricky problem for you, and I think I could make multiple of these examples, but this one is one of the most clear, that it doesn't make sense to me to judge your performance against other players playing in different matches than you. The most clear is Ana. An Ana whose teammates pick triple tank will naturally get inflated stats for lots of reasons. 1, tanks take a lot of damage and protect Ana quite easily. 2, they have more HP pools to dump her healing into. 3, they're bigger targets, easier for her to hit. All things considered, very, very easy for Anas to get their healing stats inflated playing in a triple tank lineup. That's Season 3 when it was the meta comp, or even Season 4 right now where it still gets run in some degree. Now, conversely, compare that to Ana in a different kind of comp. And this one rings true to so many people, there's a meme about it. How many Genjis need healing out there? My healer friends out there, can I get an amen? If you're playing in a comp that has 2 or 3 squishy DPS flanker heroes zipping about, it is way harder to even play Ana at all, much less to get even close to the statistical output that you can get by pegging amp healing into Roadhog's fat belly. Hitting Genjis and Pharahs on your team that are flying through the air has a much less statistical effect, but requires a ton more Ana skill to do. The Ana that wins games, playing Ana with flanking teammates, is a much better Ana player than the one that can only play well when playing with a tank-heavy lineup. Now, yet another problem. What if that same Ana player teams up with friends that play flankers only, or just so happen by the sheer nature of randomness, plays with more teammates than not that pick flanker heroes even in the tank meta or whatever? Does this system correct so that the more skillful Ana player gets appropriate SR gains in comparison to her Ana counterparts that play an easier Ana playstyle? So that's why I don't really buy this apples to apples comparison. Because if the entire community plays in multi-tank, the Ana player that plays with flankers is going to look worse on paper, but is actually better, because it's harder to play that way. That's why, to me, the only apples to apples comparison that matters is your ability to outplay the enemy team. Not to the community averages, because each game in isolation is going to draw new problems for you to have to overcome. Another issue that I have, what does this do for flex players and people who counterpick and have a very big hero pool? If I'm fill picking for my team, and maybe taking some statistical hits on the chin so that the team comp has a better chance to win, am I getting punished? Which is why, in conclusion, I don't see why they have to do that at all. The most important comparison is how you outplay the things that counter you on the enemy team. And the best measure of that is if you can win the game or not. If your Genji can wreck their Widow, if their McCree wrecks your Genji, and then you counter their McCree, how does the system even determine this counterpick play that shows so much of Overwatch skill? And I don't know this at all, but if I'm leaning towards a correct direction, does this mean that players that are considered one-tricks, who only master the statistical output of one hero, instead of being able to be flexible for the team in the various situations that Overwatch presents you, they're going to perform better at that hero, obviously because they only play them, so they're going to be the best Torbjorn that they can be. But why should they, mastering a given hero, get SR gains above a flexible player that can pick more heroes, but you would assume would be slightly less impressive statistically because it's pretty hard to keep all of your heroes at the top level that you can do? I don't think the system needs to bend over backwards to try to figure out your mechanical play, because that will be evident in the server. Like, if you're mechanically just sick, you're gonna frag out anyway. Why do we need the hidden MMR system to try to judge that for us? If you're better than the other team, they'll be on the ground and you'll be capturing the objective. Am I right? You guys are gonna have to put me a check in the comments. I don't know. At the end of the day, guys, I wish the system just judged you by your ability to win the game against the team you're playing. We've beaten this dead horse so much that it's unrecognizable, so I don't want to go down the path again, but at the very least, the lines of communication are open, and I want to know more, Blizzard. Please, lay it on me. Especially if you can answer the questions that I have. Maybe they're horrible questions. Maybe I'm completely wrong and this system is way better than the one that doesn't take all of these incredibly intricate manipulations in place. But that's kind of the problem here. Because the community doesn't really know how deep the rabbit hole goes, it leaves us to question and come up with these conspiracy theories about what is actually affecting the SR we win and lose. Thankfully, over time, they've trickled out information to help teach us all how we have to play in the system that they're in. I would love to sit down to have an incredibly in-depth and nerdy conversation to those that are behind the SR manipulation system, so I can learn more about their thought process and how they go about making these manipulations. The good news and the light at the end of the tunnel, or at the end of the rabbit hole if we keep the analogy going, is that it has been improving over time. I think it's been long enough since the win streak issue has been nerfed down a bit to say that I am confident that I was right about the win streak issue. You can let me know what you think in the comment section down below. It's felt much easier to stabilize my rank. I don't know about you guys, but I'm a whole heck of a lot happier that I can't lose my entire rank after the course of a couple bad games. Feels like it's in the right place for me. To some degree, I think this is yet another thing that I would like to see them tone back a bit, because to me, the most important stat in all of this that I don't think gets mentioned enough is your ability to beat the team in front of you. not how you statistically match up against everyone else playing their games over there. Especially when the enemy team is higher SR than you, it should never be the case that you get minimal gains as if they were the same rank. That's what I want to see matter. What a natural elo system does is if the team against you is a harder opponent and you beat them, you should get a bigger SR reward, but if you lose to them, you get a lesser SR reward. But because there's all these other complicated manipulations, it doesn't seem like that core system works the way I'd like to see it work. What I mean is, aside from this individual MMR thing, there's also the stacking issue as well. If you go in as a 3-stack or more, the system is going to put more SR against you. With that being the case, you would think intuitively that if you win about half of your games, you should slowly rank up. What's the logic behind that? Well, say you're a gold player, and you can win half of your games playing against platinums all the time. That would mean you can hang at that rank, and vice versa the other way. If you play against silvers, and only win half of your games, likely that means you're playing down to their level, and you probably should rank down. At least slowly over time with many games being played. But I think with these manipulations based upon how it's judging you to people that aren't even in the server that you're playing in, as well as whether you're in a stack or not, seems to have a really weighted effect right now. The relationship of your team versus their team doesn't seem core. Instead, it looks at you versus everyone else in the world, playing your hero in different games. And also, did you bring teammates along? Because if so, sorry, that doesn't count. Which is something that I never will understand. It's a team-based game. Why do we get punished for bringing our friends along so that we don't get teammates who throw? Anyway, I'd like to mute all these other fancy manipulations to try to get back to that core, your team versus their team, basic ELO, Bob's your uncle, and everything works out. I try not to talk too arrogantly about this because I don't design video games. I'm a guy who talks into a microphone on the internet. Not that impressive. But if we can all as a community agree that the win streak issue is resolved now and better in this scenario, I think it shows credence to some of my other arguments that we can start to look at these other things as well. Very early in the game of Overwatch, I came out very strongly against the SR system. And a lot of the community wasn't really on board. We got a lot of negative criticism about it, but over time, as this subject has come up again and again in different forms and shapes, it seems like we're all more on board with questioning some of these things. What do you guys think? If anybody out there is Alice that can take me through Wonderland and show me around the MMR system, I will happily join you on that adventure. But until then, I hope you guys let us know if you enjoyed the video. If you did, please hit the like button. It really does help us out and encourages us to keep making more content. If you did enjoy it, you might want to hit subscribe. And when you do, be sure to hit the bell icon so that you get notified when our videos go live. Sometimes videos don't show up in sub boxes, so don't be left out. Hit the bell icon and make sure you don't miss a Your Overwatch video. That's been it for me. I've been FREEDO for Your Overwatch. I'll see you guys next time.